This is the SEO Mindset podcast with your hosts, Sarah McDowell and Tazmin Suleman. This podcast is for SEO professionals, and each week, with the help of our wonderful guests, we discuss the important stuff that actually affects our careers and progression, but sadly often doesn't get talked about. You know, the invaluable soft and interpersonal skills that are often taken for granted, such as the skills we need for listening, time management, communication, and more. We also talk about the big issues that affect us and our careers, such as burnout, imposter syndrome, self-belief, saying no, plus other big issues and obstacles. With this podcast, we want to share knowledge on topics that unlock our listeners' true potential and enhance not only their careers, but all parts of their lives. So, are you ready to prioritize your own personal growth and career development? Then let's crack on with this week's episode. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us for another episode of the SEO Mindset podcast, where your hosts are myself, Sarah McDowell, and the fantastic Tazmin Suleman. New episodes go out every Thursday. Now, this week we are talking about habits, and in particular, habits that will help you be healthier, happier, and more successful. So it's such a great episode because me and Tazmin are both put in the hot seat. So we both share habits that we try to implement ourselves, habits that we want to get better at, and we even talk about things that we struggle with, because we're human at the end of the day. There's going to be things that come naturally and are easy, and there's going to be stuff that we find hard. So if you want to know how to form healthier habits when it comes to being healthier, happier, and more successful, listen to this episode. Now, before we crack on with the episode, just want to remind you how to support the podcast. We are set up on Buy Me a Coffee, where you can give us a one-off donation. Link in the show notes if you fancy doing that. And a massive shout out to everyone who has done that already, and help us spread the word about the podcast, and tell your friends, family, loved ones, work colleagues. If you know someone who would love this podcast, next time you listen to an episode and you think, crikey, they'd love this, share it with them, because the more people that we get listening to the podcast, listen to the episodes, the better for us, the better for you. You know, you're SEO people, you know how the algorithms work. Right, let's crack on with habits. Hello to all of our audience, and hello to Tazmin. How are we doing, Tazmin?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Cannot complain. I mean, it's Wednesday, and it's one of those weeks where I'm like, how is it Wednesday already? What has happened? I mean, is it Wednesday? It is definitely Wednesday, isn't it?
It is definitely Wednesday, and I sort of feel the same, but it's okay. We've still got another 2 days to go, and then the weekend to look forward to.
This is very true, and I'm praying for some sunshine, because I want to have a fairly chilled weekend where, I don't know, picnic in a park, sunning myself, reading a book, you know, finding that zen is my plan. So this episode is, well, it's kind of special, but then all of our episodes are special, right? But this is special in a way that it is a follow-on from a previous episode that we've done. So tell us about that, Tazmin.
Well, this week we have a podcast sequel. So, do you remember when we did an episode on habits, and it was all based on the book Atomic Habits, and we talked about the theory? I thought it'd be really good if we talked about how we have then applied that theory into our practical life. And around the areas, I thought we'd stick to health, career, and well-being, because that's basically what the podcast is about. And how have we taken that and improved our own lives? What do you think about that?
I think that is a cracking idea. It's a cracking podcast episode, and I can't wait to get stuck in. So, Tazmin, without further ado.
Right. So, Sarah, how have you taken the information from Atomic Habits to improve your health?
So, I find health a quite tricky thing to navigate because for me, my health kind of deteriorates when I'm running towards burnout. Yeah, that's a key indicator for me. My health starts to get worse. And I think it's the same for all of our audience members. Like audience members, I've got live podcast on the mind, our listeners, I should say. But I think it's the same for most of us, is that we push it too hard and then we feel our effects in our bodies and then we end up with a cold. We end up with flu-like symptoms. For me, I suffer with a lot of ear infections. And that is, I mean, that's a whole different podcast in itself. Not that we should do a whole podcast episode about me and my ear infections. But I do find sort of having positive health habits a bit challenging because of that, because I kind of leave it a bit too late. It's like because you'll get like a scratch in the back of your throat, don't you? Or you can feel something coming and you just carry on. You're like, I'll be better. It'll be fine. I'll just continue. I'll push myself. And I think that's where I can be better. Something that I am good regarding health is nutrition. So there's a massive link between what we put in our bodies and how it's performing and how we are feeling. So when it comes to health habits, I'd say me and my partner are fairly good because we're both fairly clued up, and being vegan, having a vegan diet, most of our meals are vegetable based anyway. So we tend to not really use meat substitutes. We do use meat substitutes, but where we can, we'll use like a healthy alternative. So, for example, when we're doing a chili or something like that, instead of using, I don't know, vegan mince or what have you, don't know if that's even a thing yet, we'll use lentils. So when it comes to food and what we put in our body, I feel like I've got that sort of clued up. But then as a caveat to that, something that I need to get better is when I'm at conferences. So obviously being in this SEO industry, fortunate position, we end up being at a lot of conferences and events that we get to attend. And that's the thing that I struggle with, because I know that my body needs nutritious food and I should be fueling it in the right way. But sometimes when you're in a conference setting and you need quick and easy food, or you end up at a pub, or you end up eating with other people, I tend to go for carbs. I go for the chips. I go for the burger sort of thing. I go for the pasta. So yeah, I think when it comes to like health habits, I'm getting better. There's always room for improvement. But yeah, I am trying to listen to my body and not take it too far when it comes to like health and stuff.
I do hear your pain on both of those counts, and health is a tricky one for me as well. I'll talk about it after the break. But let's move on to something that another area. What about your career? Have you got any habits that you have in place to help you in your career journey?
Yes. So I take my career and where I want to be and my progression seriously, or I try to take it seriously. So I try to adopt good habits. So, and some are easy every day, whereas some are a little bigger, or they take a bit more planning, or they take a lot more actions to achieve. But something that I do on a daily basis to help with my career is I work in SEO and I work in podcasting. So I make sure that So I've picked my favorite SEO newsletter. I've picked my favorite podcast newsletter, because there was a time where I signed up to anything and everything, and I got overwhelmed by all the emails that were coming into my inbox. And I knew, okay, that's not going to work. I'm not going to consume this content. Whereas just picking one or two favorites for both industries, I can consume data and keep up to date with the latest in the industry. So what's going on, because that's part of career development, isn't it? And keeping abreast of, abreast. I'm quite proud that that word just came out of my mouth so nonchalantly. And that was another stupid word that just came out of my mouth as well. But yeah, so I try to keep on top of what's going on in the industry. And I try to, obviously there's forums or conversations that happen on LinkedIn or Twitter, where you can get involved there. When it comes to more like personal growth and my personal development, I do try and challenge myself. So I am in a fortunate position where I get opportunities my way. And in the past, if something is new and I'm not familiar or I feel a bit nervous, I've been quite hesitant to say yes. But that's just because you fear the unknown. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. Whereas now I try and lean into that fear. I try and lean into that imposter syndrome, because it means that I'm growing. So when new opportunities come my way, obviously I have to think, okay, is this part of what I want to do? Is this part of my career path? Is this part? Am I doing this just because someone's asked me and I can't say no? Or is it actually going to help me succeed and grow and develop? And if it is, I say yes to it. I have a go. And because then what I always remember is if I enjoy something, then that's great, and I'm good at it. Or if I enjoy something and I'm not so good at it, I can improve. If I don't enjoy something, I just don't do it again. And then the other element of the career side is, I've had coaching and training. So I've invested in counselling, and I'm very aware that unfortunately not everyone can afford counselling, but that has very much helped me, because you have to deal with your own stuff that's going on. But I have also, you've been my coach, you've been my career coach, you've helped me and stuff. And I invested in myself in that way. And I remember shifting my mindset. So I'm back in the day, I would find it easy to splurge on a nice pair of trainers or fancy dinner and stuff. But when it came to like personal growth coaching and that side of things, I'd be hesitant to spend the money. Whereas it was a shift in the mindset, like, you matter as a person, your own personal journey, your own personal growth matters. So I think having that shift in mindset helps you to invest in yourself when you have the funds and resource to be able to do it.
It definitely, I know that your growth is really important to you, but just hearing you saying about all of the steps that you take, all of the things that you think about, just shows what depth you are going to. And I, for one, am very excited for your new journey as a freelancer and a podcast coach. And it's so good to see you doing things that you love doing, but it's taken planning, it's taken effort for you to get to where you've got to, which is brilliant.
Something that I need to get better at as well is I say yes. I have a tendency to say yes to everything. And when I'm saying yes to everything, I sometimes forget to actually plan and actually think, crikey, I've got to fit all of this stuff into my working day or whenever in my week, in my weekend and stuff. So yeah, I think that's something that I need to get better at, because I'm so, I don't know, and I don't want this to come across as corny, but I'm quite excited by life. I'm excited by stuff. And if there's if there's a new opportunity, I'm just going to try it. I'm going to do it. And you're only going to get better. Like if I hadn't started podcasting back in 2018, and I feel so fortunate that I managed to not beg, because that sounds to say away, but after persuading my friend to do my first ever podcast, I didn't have any idea what I was doing in the first place. But I said yes, I did it. And look where I am now. I'm doing a wonderful podcast with a great co-host, Tazmin. We're doing live shows. We're making money. We're making a difference and stuff. So I have to I don't know what you think about this, but I find that hard to balance of saying yes to the new opportunities, but remembering, okay, what are you saying yes to? Plan this into your day. Plan this into your diary. That's the bit that I struggle with, and I don't know what you think about that one.
I think balancing when you've got so many things going on, it's a bit like sitting on one of those big yoga balls. It's not a just simple or straightforward thing. But I think I'm getting better at it, but I wouldn't say that I'm there. And I don't think anyone actually gets there. I'm sure, well, actually, maybe they do, but I certainly don't. But it leads me on to, and it's funny you say that the people pleasing leads to burnout, but then the burnout also leads to bad eating habits. So it's all sort of linked together. What do you do to look after your well-being? Because you're really busy, you're taking on more and more opportunities. What do you do to look after your mental?
So I've tried, there's lots of different things that I've tried. And it's funny, isn't it? Because this is habits. So you have to try certain things so many times for it. You need to create a habit. So you can't just do something once and then think, wow, this is going to be habit. It has to be continuous. Or something that I did sort of have a go with is habit stacking, where there's a habit that you want to do, but you're not currently doing it. So you habit stack onto something else. So for example, something that I did try, and I did do this for a while, but then I got out of it, was that so me and Tash often, we wind down from a day by watching Netflix. So I was like, well, I'm already watching Netflix. We're already watching whatever we're watching on that night. Why not? Why I can sit, stretch, do some yoga, do some stretching at the same time. So something that I did try is habit stacking, or and I think you did something similar to this, but I'm always making myself a cup of coffee, because I love coffee, or mint tea, or hot water and lemon. So I'm already doing that. But what I try to do is, okay, while the kettle is boiling, can I hold a squat for a bit? Because exercise is important, isn't it? Exercise and stretching. But other areas of well-being that I try to do is I always put time aside for a lunch break. So no matter how busy I am, no matter how many projects and all the wonderful stuff I said yes to, I always make sure that I factor at least half an hour. Ideally, I like an hour, but I always like to factor in half an hour where I can make a nutritious lunch and I can sit and have time to enjoy that and rest my brain. Another way that I look after my well-being is after work is finished, I always go out for a walk with Benny the dog. So I think what's tricky is if you work from home, and especially I'm freelancing now. I've been freelancing for a month, or just over a month, and I was sort of like working a bit too much because there was no cut-off point. Like there was no routine of, oh, I need to leave the house to go to the office. I need to leave the office to come home. So I was like, okay, I need to create some sort of routine to break. Okay, we've finished work now. Now it's the evening. Now it's downtime. So what I make sure, and it's in my calendar, is at the end of each of my day, there is either a half an hour walk with Benny or an hour walk with Benny. Obviously, Benny loves it when we do an hour walk. But yeah, so there's different things that I try and do. Reading is another good one for me. I did also try to journal, but I got out of the habit of that. And I know journaling is a wonderful thing. But what is similar to journaling is, so I love chatting, as you probably know. But me and Tash got into a habit of, at the end of the day, we'd say something that we'd learned, something that we learned, something that we're grateful for the other person for. And we did do one beef. So we were like, okay, what has annoyed you today? And there are some nights where we forget to do that, but doing that is similar to journaling, I suppose, but rather than writing it down, you're speaking it out. So yeah, obviously there's more that I can do with my well-being, and I'm not always 100% there, but it's a journey.
It certainly is a journey. It sounds like you put lots and lots in place. So we're going to go for a short break in a minute, and then afterwards I'll come and give you things that I'm doing in these areas. But I just wanted to ask you, what is the one habit that you think has really made a difference out of all of the ones? Or if you don't want to answer that one, what's one habit that you really would like to form? You can take your pick, Sarah.
Well, I find it really hard just to pick one habit, because I think they all serve a purpose, don't they? So yeah, I'm going to pick the other habit of what was another habit that I'd like to form? What would I like to do? And that would be, I'm trying to think now. 1 minute, please, caller. What is a good habit that I would like to put in place? I think I could do more exercise. I think that's sort of fallen by the wayside at the moment. So before going freelance, I was doing one-to-one kickboxing, which was great. It was a great stress relief and great fun at the same time. But while I was just starting freelancing, because obviously having a one-to-one personal trainer is spenny, right? So what I need to find is a new exercise, because exercise is linked to well-being and your health at the end of the day. It gets those endorphins. It's great for your body. Like, you'll never regret doing exercise. So I think what I need to do is get in the habit where every day I'm doing some sort of exercise.
Again, completely resonate with that one. If you'd asked me that question, I'd have given you the same answer. I wish I could have the daily habit of exercising, but at the minute it's maybe 4 times a week, but it's 4 times a week having a walk around the lake. It's not kickboxing.
I mean, walking is so good for us, but it just goes to show, Tazmin, we're so in tune.
So thanks so much for those great tips there. A few of them I certainly would like to adopt, but let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue this discussion.
Introducing Clear Narrative Media, a purpose-led media marketing agency that transforms how founders, creatives, and organizations share their stories online. Dedicated to assisting you with all your marketing, content, and strategy needs. Their services include photography, consultancy, and social media management. Clear Narrative Media is here to transport your visions to life. They are on a mission to help you to create awareness, build visibility, and enhance your business and professional growth overall. For more information, head over to their website at cnmedia.com or follow the link in the show notes. Hi, Sarah here from the SEO Mindset. Just a quick reminder that if you do enjoy the podcast and what me and Tazmin are doing, you can support by donating as little as £5 to us via our Buy Me a Coffee page. Just head on over to the seomindset.co.uk/donate. There will be a link to that page in this episode's show notes. And also, we'd love it if you shared our podcast with others. The more listeners we get, we can continue to find awesome guests to join us for episodes and talk about important topics. So, the next time you are listening to an episode and think someone would enjoy, tell them. Open up the episode in your app, find the share button, and you will be able to copy the link to the episode and send it to them via WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Slack. There's so many ways that you can help us spread the word.
We are back with part 2, folks. Very exciting. So, you've all heard my, I was going to say deepest, darkest secrets, but they're not. They're useful habits to share with everyone. But Tazmin, you put me in the hot seat. It's now time for a role reverse, and I'm going to put you in the hot seat. So, first question, tell us about your health habits.
So much like you, I have focused more on the nutrition side of it and less on the exercise. So I said before the break that one thing I do is walk about 3-4 times a week. But with the nutrition side, I would ask my husband, what should I cook? And he would always say anything. It would drive me spare. So I created a spreadsheet of all of our favorite foods, and generally on Fridays, I'll do a bit of a what are we going to eat next week. It's either Friday or Saturday morning I'll do it. And I've got one of these magnetic whiteboards, and I'll write down, what are we going to have for breakfast, lunch and dinner, and I'll batch cook. So one dinner will cook, serve us 2 times, or lunches will serve us 2 times. So that's really been helpful. But I did find that I was getting a little bit bored. So recently what I've done is I'll have a rough idea of what I'm cooking, but I'll buy lots of really nice fruit, really nice herbs. And when that's in place, all the meals just turn out to be super tasty, which means I'm snacking less. So that's one thing I do for my health.
So can I interject here? So I love a meal plan. Me and Tash live by a meal plan. So when we do our weekly shop, we base it on the meals that we're going to cook. And then we've got a whiteboard that is, like a to-do list that's on our fridge. And we sort of say what the foods are going to be, because we find that when we have the food in and we've got a plan, it makes stuff easier. And also, Tazmin, I don't know if you get this, but there's some days where you can't be bothered to cook. But if you've got a food plan and you've got meals in there which are batch cook, so obviously when I'm cooking for just me and Tash, I was going to say Tazmin, but you're not my partner. I mean, you are my partner, but you're my podcast partner. But there's might be times where you can't be bothered to cook. So when I've just cooked a meal for the 2 of us, there's always leftovers. So we have that as a backup. So I don't know, do you find that helpful?
Absolutely, Sarah. I'm with you on the batch cooking. It makes life very, much easier. And what I'll also do is once every now and then, I'll cook something that I can put portions in the freezer. So it just helps ahead of time. Or I will marinate a whole batch of meats or something and put those in the freezer. So that really helps me. And another thing that I've been doing to make things better for me on a nutrition front is I like snacking. So every time I reach for a snack, I pause and I ask myself, are you really hungry, Tazmin? Or are you thirsty? Or are you bored? Because it's not always because I'm hungry. So those are my health habits.
That's a really good habit to have, because I remember being told that sometimes when you think you're hungry, it's actually the fact that you've not drank in a while. And also, and it could be that you're eating because you're feeling like bored and you need to pass the time, don't you? So I love those questions of like asking yourself and having that awareness. All right, so I think we've got health and nutrition, definitely nutrition sorted. So what do you do when it comes to career?
So much like you, working for myself, there's no one to tell me what to do in my career. So I've built up a few habits. One thing I do is either on Friday afternoon or Sunday night, never on a Saturday, because Saturday is my complete day off, I will plan the week ahead. What do I want to get done in that week? So that's one thing that keeps me on track. The other thing that helps me stop being in work mode is at the end of the day, I will write down the 3 things I want to do the next day, and I will write it down in my diary, and I'll close the laptop, because that for me is end of day now. The other habit that I've formed is that every morning I will read something that will help me in some part of my career, whether it's learning how to write better or, self-reflection, whatever it is. But I'd got into the habit of just reading and not applying. So now what I do is read less, but I make sure that I either curate what I have read or I will apply. So if it's a copywriting thing, I think, I could do that right now. I'll go and do it straight away, or I will at least reflect on what I've learnt and how I want to apply it. Otherwise, what was happening was that I was just reading and not applying, and that's just a waste of time.
I think that's going to resonate with a lot of our audience, because we're told that reading is really good for us. And the more that we read, the better. But I completely agree that sometimes you can just read and read and read, and it's kind of like information overload. So it's really good that you're actually challenging yourself and you're saying, okay, out of the things that I've read, what can I then go and implement? And it's sort of similar. So I know it's kind of different, but I remember when I first went to conferences, I was going to all the talks, noting down all of the information and all the actions, and there was just too much. I was coming away and I had a list that was 50, 100 points long, and I was just like, this is not manageable. Whereas instead, what I do is I go to less talks and I pick 2 to 3 things that I'm going to implement from that talk. Maybe it's something to do with SEO, maybe it's something to do with podcasting, maybe it's something to do with career, but that's kind of similar, isn't it? But you're switching the books out for talks or things that you're learning or podcasts that you're listening to.
Absolutely. And part of my journaling reflection now hasn't just been what have I learned, it's what have I learned and then applied. And if I can't apply it, it's okay, when do I think I will be able to apply it? I think the other thing that I do now is I got trapped into responding to emails. So I'd start work and it would be emails and Slack messages and so on and so forth. So for the first hour of my day, I work on something that is going to move things forward. So whether that's a piece of writing that I do, or if it's writing a few emails or a few newsletters, it's what can I do for me? Something creative, something progressive. And I find that if I do that, I've sort of won, if that makes sense. And then the rest of the day, it's not that I don't have any structure in place, but winning that first hour really helps me.
Yeah, I think that's a great habit and a great tactic to give to our listeners, because we all get into email holes, Slack message holes, but also social media as well. LinkedIn, Twitter, all the other forums. And I think sometimes, especially if because every time that you are responding to an email, responding to a message, getting involved in a conversation, you're getting that dopamine hit. And I was finding that I don't know how, but 3 hours into my day had just been spent on emails, messages, getting involved in conversations. And I'm like, whilst that might be great of the relationship building, I'm the most productive in the morning. My mind is most switched on. So that's when I need to be doing my stuff. So I'm I'm similar in that I set times set times in the morning and in the evening, just before finishing work, that I'll check emails. But what I am going to take on board is what you said. So before checking emails, I need to do something that's going to move me forward. So I start my working day at 8:30. So I could say, okay, I check emails at 10:30, but that gives me a 2-hour window to do something awesome.
So this is a tip that I got from somebody called Amanda Goetz. She's on LinkedIn, and I believe she used to be a tennis player, and she categorizes tasks in either offense tasks or defense tasks. So she said that things like writing her newsletter or working on a presentation are offense tasks, and emails and Slack messages are defense tasks. So I found that was a really good way of categorizing it for me.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Time is running away from us, Tazmin. Should we squeeze in some well-being habits? I'm sure that you've got loads here.
Yeah, so a few things. So when I wake up in the morning, I don't do a gratitude list on a piece of paper. I just walk around the house and I'll practice gratitude as I'm walking. So if I'm making the bed, I'll be grateful for the fact I've got a bed, being able to feel things, being able to see things. And I find that puts me in a really good mood straight away. The other habit that I've been forming, so the old saying, when you get out of bed, make your bed straight away, finish it off, because then you end up being somebody who finishes things off. The other thing I'll do is, if I've created some dishes, I will wash them straight away. I will keep my desk tidy. I will sweep the kitchen, and I just find myself a lot calmer when that is in place. And then I'll do things to make me happy. So I'll compliment people every day because it makes me happy. And it's constantly trying to raise my energy.
And I think happiness is so important, and arguably we don't talk about this as much as we should. Like, a random thing has come into my head. So there was back in the day. So I'm now 33, but this is when I was like early 20s, and I was at this networking event where they invited a guest speaker. And the guest speaker, I can't remember their name because, time has passed since then. But it was really interesting because he did a whole speech and a whole talk about happiness, because he was saying there's a lot of research done into depression and what makes us sad. And there's lots of talks and lots of resources and a lot of articles about that. What is missing is people talking about happiness, researching happiness. What does happiness mean? And I also, so following on from that, a few years ago, there was a documentary on Netflix all about happiness, and it was showing different people's viewpoints of happiness. And I mean, happiness is a big link to your well-being. So it's great that you're doing stuff that is making you happy, and complimenting someone is a great one because you feel good and that person that you're complimenting feels good, don't they? But if you can do happiness related to your career and your industry as well, and this is where having some self-awareness is important. So in your day-to-day, in your job as an SEO professional, what is it that brings you happiness? What is it that makes that you find joyous? Because sadly, when you're an adult and you're doing jobs and you're doing life, and it's not just in your career, but also in your personal life, you have to do stuff that you don't like. That's just part and parcel. But if you can find the things that actually bring you happiness and bring you joy, you can do more of that. So I love that. And I'm gonna take on that challenge. And I think all of our listeners should take on that challenge, that every day they need to compliment someone.
And there's links between productivity and happiness as well. So it's not just about your well-being, it's about getting more stuff done. You are going to get more stuff done if you compliment yourself, even if you give yourself a pat on the back. Nobody achieved more by giving themselves a hard time. It's not sustainable. And I wanted to mention a book that I think we've mentioned it before, The 12-Week Year. So this is where you say, these are the outcomes I want, and these are the habits that are going to help me get there. So for health, for example, it could be, I'm going to walk 5 times a day. I'm going to drink X number of glasses of water. And it really keeps you accountable of what outcomes you want and makes you reflect on what actions are going to get you there. And if you can do that for the 12 weeks, you're going to be forming those habits. So there's a lot more talk about this book on the internet now. My friend Ali Abdul, I mean, he's not my real friend, but he's real. He's not my real friend. But he's been talking a lot about how implementing it has made him far more productive, and he is productivity guru.
So what I have just done is I've added a link to that book in this episode show notes. So yeah, just head on over to there, and if you feel like that book is for you, then definitely check that out. Tazmin, we need to wrap up now. Time is done. We've run out of time. So just want to say thank you to you, Tazmin. Obviously, this podcast wouldn't work if you weren't here. So thank you. Thank you for planning this awesome episode. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Reminder that if you do enjoy what me and Tazmin are doing, then you can support us. You can give us a one-off donation. So we're set up on Buy Me a Coffee. Link in the show notes if you fancy doing that. And we're very appreciative of the people who have already done that. And share. Yeah. Help us get the word out about the SEO Mindset podcast. Tell your loved ones, tell friends, tell family, tell work colleagues, tell your pets. Next time you're listening to an episode and you're like, crikey, Sandra, I don't know anyone called Sandra, or do I? Anyway, Sandra would love this. I need to share this with them. Find the link and do it. Share the episode with them, because that would be wonderful. So before we say our final goodbyes, anything else? Any final thoughts, quick words of wisdom, Tazmin?
Well, thank you too, because you've turned me from somebody who didn't know anything about podcasting to a bit of an addict now. I so look forward to our chats. But all I'd like to add is, if any of our listeners want to send us a message about habits they are forming or have formed off the back of any of our episodes, then that would be amazing. We'd love to hear from you.
Definitely. All right. Wonderful. Well, take care of yourself, everyone. And until next time.
Looking to create awareness, build visibility, and enhance growth for your business, organisation, or yourself? Introducing Clear Narrative Media, a purpose-led media and marketing agency that transforms how founders, creatives, and organisations share their stories online. Dedicated to assisting you with all your marketing, content, and strategy needs. You can find them on all social media platforms and online at cnmediaa.com, or follow the link in the show notes.